Monday, November 14th, 2016. It is currently 8 p.m. Eastern. This is Maelstrom Radio.
Maelstrom Radio. With your hosts, Flex and Shinter.
And the song played twice. And crap. So you know what's funny? I had that on lock. I'll figure it out later. I think it's on auto replete. So
yeah, you might stop that whole auto play thing.
Yeah, a little bit. Hey, I know our theme song is great, guys. I know you guys want to hear it twice. It's so good. And, Benjamin Anthony James, rocking it out. Good music. I changed that. Shin. It's episode. You know what? This is episode 13, so everything's going fantastic.
As usual, yep.
Yeah.
We have great tech problems.
All the time. Doing it live. Always live. Alright.
So yes, episode 11, I'm gonna go back to 11 now. I was just working with it, trying to
Alright, we're
finish
gonna
stuff here, but
it's fun. Let's talk about Final Fantasy 11. Welcome to Vanadil.
that means we're one episode away from 14. That's got to be a special one.
Our 14th episode for our Final Fantasy 14 podcast.
Yeah.
Can't be any worse than our episode 13 of our Final Fantasy 14 podcast.
It's gonna work out well. Like in about 7 days, we're gonna be doing our 14th episode, and another 7 days after that. So about 15 days from now, which is the day before 15 is released, we're doing our 15th episode.
What?
If I didn't know any better, I would have thought that we almost planned this. But like most things we do, it just happened to work out.
Yeah, we're not that smart. I mean, we appear intelligent. But, that's mostly for defense mechanisms.
Looks can be deceiving.
Yeah. So if you met us at FanFest, you're like, God, these guys, there's something about these guys we like. And it's like, and we're just like, we're two potatoes with mics.
And yet neither of us rolled a Lalafell.
No. Chili's a Lalafell, though. Shout out to Chili. He's proud of that Lalafell too. Constantly sharing pics. Check my Lalafell out.
There's just something wrong about Lalafells. I don't know what it is, but just something.
It's because they're so tiny. And then some of them have deep-ish voices.
All of them have deep issues. Although I was talking about this earlier today, surprisingly, and going back to the Massively Overpowered posted a blog post about Final Fantasy 14 with the end of 1.0 and the beginning of 2.0 happening about 4 years ago. And they included the link to the that video that they played at the end of 1.0, and I saw it apparently for the first time because I've never seen the full thing, and I was talking to someone about it and they mentioned actually that it somehow seemed very, very fitting that the White Mage was a Lalafell. And part of me was slightly offended as a white mage player, but then part of me was also like, yeah, you know what? That kind of fits really, really well.
Please explain. Maybe I don't
Why
get
it
it.
fits or why was I offended? Because I
Both.
think the
A
offended
little
part is
bit of
probably
both.
pretty
No,
self-explanatory.
that one I kind of get. Yeah, no, I get that one. Why it fits that the Lalafell was a white mage.
Well, and not so much that the Lalafell was a white mage, but just like watching that cinematic, it just felt right that it was a Lalafell that was doing the healing. Like, I don't know. You have to go and watch the video again, but it made sense that it was a Lalafell for whatever reason.
I'll go with it. I'm gonna say I'm gonna go with it. I trust you, your friend, maybe. Are you trying to talk people into playing this game? Is that what you're trying to do? It's like, check out this ending.
No, I don't think he's gonna come back again. He did play in the past.
Oh, that friend?
Probably a different friend.
Oh, okay. Not the crap.
Played long before I even started.
Got it. Should come back, check it out. I mean, if he played 1.0, probably like 2.0 a little better.
He baited 2.0 and then played bits and pieces of it.
Fair enough.
Different
Fair
servers.
enough.
The other friend that I brought into this game that I might be seeing him in a couple weeks, so I might be able to see what's going on. No promises, though.
Speaking of things and other stuff of nature, guess what? I mean, I got nothing. We did Palace of the Dead, but you know, we can talk about that later if you want, or we can talk about it now.
Might as well talk about it now. So yeah, we ran Palace of the Dead. It went mostly okay.
Yeah, it wasn't too bad. I got pox at one point.
Yeah, pox is a bitch.
And I kind of forgot about it. Because I had, 1 minute left, and I was like, oh, hey, because people were sort of like, yo, take a potion. I was like, ah! And I freaked out, and I took the lowest potion you could possibly take.
I'm pretty sure you were at like 150 health, which is pretty sad as a Dark Knight.
Yeah, and I was like, well, this is how I die. This is it. And they're like, how come you didn't pop a bigger potion? I was like, I literally freaked out and hit the wrong. And I was like, first, and here's the thing. Don't make all your potions look alike. Fucking change them up slightly. Put an H on it or some shit. For,
they are all different. Some are blue, some are yellow, some are purple.
Yeah, but some of them are pink, and it's like potion and X potion are the same damn color and the same damn bottle. The only difference is they have a little bit of shimmer. So if you're freaking out over pox and you're almost dead, you're like, click the pink thing.
Why do you have the little potion on your hotbar then?
So I used it on the lower levels just in case.
All right, I'll trust you with that one.
Sure. Let's go with that. I probably did something. All right, we got some news. No, there's not a lot of news for Final Fantasy 14, but this is Final Fantasy related news, which we kind of talked about already. But if you didn't hear the first part of the show, boss came up.
It was like 2 minutes.
Like 2 minutes ago. But yeah, Final Fantasy 15 is 15 days away. There is currently our other third co-host is currently tweeting out 15 reasons why you love Final Fantasy series. So you're giving one reason a day for 15 days. That's a hashtag. So his first thing was the sound design, like the music. I agree with him. I think it's fantastic. So show love. Game Radar, Game Spying, GameSpot, Game Somebody, Game Radar maybe. I don't know. One of the gaming news site downloaded the demo and played the first 5 hours because you can get the demo if you know how to get a Japanese PlayStation Network account, like this guy, because I wanted the free Final Fantasy 14 themes for my PlayStation. I was like, but I don't have a Japanese PlayStation thing, so I created one so I can download the free things. Sony doesn't give them over here. By the way, they're great. They play music and that's so nice. Anyway, there's a demo that you can download and play. It gives you about 5 hours, and their pre-review is that so far the game is great, which is really good news. Because
It's a little clunky sometimes, but
it's expected. This is new territory for them. A little. I mean, if they're. I mean, yes, they have the Kingdom Hearts games, but I think for a Final Fantasy service, this is a big undertaking. I mean, 10 years in the making is pretty big. So I'm excited. Shin's excited. I think this is his first Final Fantasy game outside of 14.
I did play the first one.
Okay. It's going to be very different going forward.
I'm hoping so, yep.
So, now my question is, will you pick up the remake of 7 that comes out?
Yes.
All right.
Of course I'm going to pick. I picked up 7 long ago because I've heard such great things about it. But then I heard the remake was coming out, so I figured why not just wait a couple more years.
Now, I can tell you this. If you wanted to play through 7, there's the 9999 mode, which just lets you, or you can skip all like the battles and stuff. Hey, Evolved Mail, how's it going?
Where's the fun in that?
Where's the fun in that? I don't know, man. Like, if you just wanted to see the story with like
Funny YouTube for that.
Listen, you could go to YouTube and go watch it, but I think that you need to experience Cloud cross-dressing as a woman to get the full. That's the thing that happens in that game. I'm sorry.
You need to have that in all the glory of HD of that the remake will have.
You need to see Cloud dress up as a woman in all full glory HD, like 4K resolution. Can we get that in on the PlayStation VR? I mean, not for reasons.
That's what
PlayStation VR Cloud dressed as a woman. This is how we get. This is how we get kicked off Twitch, right? All right. I'm gonna move on before we get kicked off. Final Fantasy 14 fan kit updated. It's just for the 3rd year anniversary of Final Fantasy 14. It's good stuff. It's a hand-drawn art. It features some characters, including Harshafont, and I believe, yes, and who else was in there? Little boy, or your favorite? Forget his name already.
You're talking about Alfie?
Yeah, that guy. It's him or his sister. It's hard to tell sometimes. All right. Bigger and better news. Letter from the Producer Live 33 is going to be a 2-part special for 3.5. That airs on the day after Thanksgiving here in the U.S. So that is November 25th. That is actually next Friday. So other than me being up to buy new computer parts for the thing that I'm currently streaming on to stream better for the future, I'll also be watching, because I have 2 monitors, I'll be watching Letter from the Producer Live here. And I don't speak Japanese, so I'm just going to be like, all right. I know what that picture looks like. So I'll probably get go to Blue Garter and get a translated edition of that. But if you're going to be up, it's going to be at like 3 a.m. So I'll probably be up anyway. So, and last bit of news, it's our news. We'll be guest hosting on Move Around Radio this Saturday coming up on the 19th. So Chili and Palmetto are having asked us back. I don't know why. Those guys seem to really. I think
they would have learned.
Yeah, no, they didn't. So they asked us back, and they definitely want to chat. I'm not sure about what yet. I'm pretty sure food is going to be involved, because if I learned anything, Moogle Around is about 78% food, and
No, mostly food.
Mostly food. It's all food. So, all right. So our main talking points tonight is I don't know how to cut this, but it's kind of like Warcraft, the state of World of Warcraft, and the state of Final Fantasy 14. Now, I've said this on the show before, but I played WoW since vanilla, and I pretty much, you can equate that to me taking my money and throwing it into a pit and lighting it on fire for 12 years. That is a lot of money. I mean, I could even, if I did the math, I shouldn't.
Don't do the math. Trust me on this.
I don't know.
I've been there. Don't do the math. Although my experience with WoW is about a month or so when Legion came out.
If I did the math. If I
Was it a month?
Yeah. Well, a month. No, longer. It's about 2 months.
All right.
Yeah. Just I spent a lot of money. I could have I could have put a down payment on stuff. I mean, if I also include like buying the collector's edition expansions, you can clearly tell up there behind my head, I do have them. So it's not like, I mean, I play Blizzard games. It's just a thing I do.
A very important position right next to the Stein.
Yeah, yeah, right. My they are. There's my BlizzCon.
It's the place of honor on the shelf. That or they're driving you to drink, or both. You never know.
I got problems. All right. So I'm gonna break it down into simple things. That's how I kind of want to take care of it. So the first thing, of course, is gonna be story. The story of World of Warcraft was very straightforward. Actually, there wasn't much story going into vanilla. It was this kind of like, there's the Alliance, here's the Horde. You saw that opening cutscene where it was just like kind of showing off classes, and you're like, we're like, all right, fucking orcs. And it kind of just gave you that like overview of the world. But it kind of grew in story as Burning Crusade came out. You got History of Illidan, and then when Wrath of the Lich King came out, you got the big story with Arthas, and that was when Warcraft was at its peak. Going in after that, you had Cataclysm, or Cataclysm. I call it Cataclysm. And the stories always felt never truly connected. Like, they always felt like, here's the theme park, like the new section of our theme park. Like, if you go to Disney and you go to Magic Kingdom, like Magic Kingdom is one thing in itself, but then you have like, there's Tomorrowland, there's this, and always felt like that's what Blizzard kind of chunked their stories into, up until recently. I would say going from Pandaria, that story, like, they started connecting the stories in each other. I would say almost in Cataclysm, it started like these trails, like these getting these, not like these, like a weave going through the stories that all kind of interconnected up to this point where they are in Legion. And it's taken a different turn where it used to be like, here's this and you're gonna play through this, and when you're done with it, that's it. And we'll give you maybe a little, like, maybe at the very end, and like we'll lead in with a expansion launch leading you into the story. And that's always been kind of, that's always been kind of WoW's MO for their story, is not how can it go back and like it's carefully woven. Because they really don't do that. It's more of, if it doesn't fit the future, they'll retcon it in a way, like through time travel or alternate dimensions, what have you. So, story's not big in Warcraft, and I'll say this: my character, and not every WoW player will agree with this, but it's kind of true. They're breaking away from it with a little bit, and maybe Shin can probably, as a newer person who played in Legion, I always felt my character was just like this, I don't want to say peon, but like, there are bigger characters than me, and clearly they are the story, and I am the guy who does their bidding in the world. Where in Final Fantasy 14, I feel like I'm much more, even though I'm doing other, go and kill this, do that, I still feel like more involved. Like, I feel like I'm a bigger part of the world than I am in Warcraft, if that makes any sense. Like, my character, story-wise, feels bigger in Final Fantasy 14 than it does in Warcraft.
And I think it's kind of a difference in how they're kind of doing that storytelling too. Like in Final Fantasy 14, you are the hero of light. You are this main focal point of the entire world. And yes, there are many heroes of light out there, but you are the main person that's solving all of these problems. You're right at the heart of the Scions, helping them and all of the stuff that they're involved in. You're helping out Old Dahl with all of their issues. You're helping all of the main characters who, while are pretty amazing on their own at times, also are, I guess, almost equal to you. But you're equal to them in that sense. They're not greater than you, or if they are, they happen to be that big bad evil guy that you're eventually going to go kill at some point. Whereas with WoW, it's more you are one of many. Like there are many heroes out in the world. All of the adventurers are out there uh, trying to help, making things better. You're not really the focal point of the story. You're just one of many, which is kind of a little bit more realistic, I think, especially in that MMO sense of there's hundreds and thousands of people around you. You're not the only one that's out there, where Final Fantasy treats you as you are the one special one. And I guess it kind of depends on your point of view of is that a good thing or a bad thing.
True. But I guess it would also depend on. I don't know. I agree with you, and I don't know. I feel like both of them take it into a very far. Like there should be some happy middle ground where it's like, you are all the Warriors of Light, and then like I still get those cutscenes where it's like, hey man, thanks, you're doing some good stuff. I'm more involved. But am I Warrior of Light? No, it's. I don't think there could be a happy medium. So.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
If you start going with that happy medium, it's like, yeah, everyone gets a participation medal. Like it's, yes, everything's special, but at the same time, no one's special, and it really doesn't work out that well for anyone involved because you just end up feeling completely useless.
And you get a trophy, and you get a trophy, and you get a trophy. Everybody gets trophies. So, all right. So, and everyone listening, like, if we don't talk too much on the Final Fantasy 14 side of things, it's in. Please understand that we can only assume that you're already a Final Fantasy 14 player. If you're new, all right, I'll take it from this aspect. If you're a WoW player, you're listening to this, because you may listen to this if you're a Warcraft player. Like, what is Final Fantasy 14 about? Story-wise, we'll hit all the points, but story-wise, the story is much more focused on you, the player, versus the players. That doesn't mean that the other people around
it's
you.
It's telling a story. It's a whole narrative around.
Yeah.
It's like most of the other games in the Final Fantasy series. There is an entire narrative around the world, you, how you're involved in the world, how what you do, regardless of if it is more of a very, very Rails focused. Like you don't have the option of going and doing these 20 different things to solve it. You pretty much have to follow this one path, at least as far as the storyline is concerned. Actual gameplay, completely different story. But that's what Final Fantasy is. It has that very strong narrative, I would think.
And not to say that's not a selling point for me, and possibly Shin, but like for me, that's a strong selling point because I really like the narrative because the story is written really well. Like you do feel for the characters you're introduced to, where sometimes in Warcraft you don't feel so like. And I'm not saying I don't feel for certain characters. Like sometimes I feel like characters are forgotten or underwritten, and then they won't get their time to shine because there's so many of them that they have to pick and choose. Where Final Fantasy is very like every character they introduce to you has some importance until they don't, and then they're important for that time. Like you get why they're there, and then if they have a speaking role, it makes sense. It does make sense in the world that it's set in. So it's not like random Joe NPC sometimes, although you do have like random Joe NPC, but there's a little more to it. Like there's a little more to like, it's almost like I would say a well-written D&D story if the characters weren't made up on the fly. Like there's a little more to each character. Like there's something they say or they're doing. I don't know. It's kind of fleshed out in the world. Little things like that. That I like. So, but that's always been Final Fantasy games. Like these NPCs aren't your run-of-the-mill always NPCs. In Warcraft, it may be the guy shoveling poop. It's a hard truth. Next, I think the next important thing for people besides story is the world. in Warcraft, the world is open. You can walk from one end of the map to the other, never seen a loading screen. Um, and then, I mean, there are loading screens to get across the water, but the continents themselves don't have them. Uh, I would attribute that to, I don't know if it was how they looked at EverQuest at the time, because WoW was really looking at the EverQuest model of an open world, running around, making it feel alive. Um, so giving that technology at the time, they really pushed for that. If I remember correctly, and I mean, if I'm wrong, let me know. But I believe 1.0 was open, um, and to get it onto the PS3, like they promised, they had to cut some corners, and I could understand cutting out the open areas to that lead into like a western Thanalan, like because those are mostly like I would almost call them a hallway, like it was just like a path through a mountain. Um, so I could see how that those chunks would be like as small as they were, or like that data is probably really taxing on a PS3 system. Considering how little horsepower, I mean, as old as the PS3 system is, the horsepower to run an MMO at the quality that Final Fantasy 14's at, taking that out helped it. And if I remember correctly, Final Fan like Heavensward really was pushing that system, like really. Like no offense to PS3 players, but I've seen like Final Fantasy 14 Heavensward on a PS3, and I listen. Just go look at it on a PS4 or PC and ask for that for Christmas. Like that's all I can say. Like I'm just saying, if you're like, I don't know if I'll play after Heavensward because I'm not sure if it's worth it for me to get PS4. Like trust me, it's first of all, if you're having fun, it's worth it. But you know, I understand like cost and everything. So world wise, the openness I like in WoW, but we don't get that in Final Fantasy. But I think it's just a limitation for trying to get it into as many hands as possible.
I think a little bit too is that WoW does have what a good solid 8 years on top of Final Fantasy. Like it has, well, maybe not eight, but it has a decent number of years on. Oh, wait,
Not 9.
got 8 years, doesn't it?
Well, 8 if you're including 1.0.
Including 1.0, Final Fantasy has been out for about 8 years, which would put it around 8 years after WoW came out. It's wow, damn. Anyway, WoW has that extra 8 years of content on it, and just while their zones are massive, and WoW has a huge amount of content, and it's amazing actually how big the world is. Uh, we still haven't seen what happens with Eorzea in the next 8 years.
It's true. So, I guess on that point, we'll say that we know going into Stormblood that the amount for their budget, it's not doubled. Maybe
It's at least as much.
it's more because Heavensward is 14 point something million for Heavensward, and Stormblood's getting 36.8 million. They're getting a lot.
That's over double then. Yep.
Yeah, it's over double. They're getting they're getting a lot to make Stormblood. So this is why they're increasing the graphics. I expect, if not in Stormblood, the expansion after Stormblood, we won't see loading screens. I would expect that. I think the world will be more open and more alive. That's me.
I can see maybe the new content being like that, but maybe probably not the old content yet.
Not yet.
I think there has to be that little bit of a transition period, especially since we have like the inventory expansion and all of that coming up with this expansion as well.
Don't want to kill the game. It may crash.
No, we've already seen that at 1.0.
Also, we know that the graphics are getting a bump, an increase, which in Warcraft that didn't happen until Warlords of Draenor. So,
how many years was Warlords in?
That would be.
It's been out for 16 years.
Well,
14 years now.
13. Yeah. Oh, yeah. So that was probably around the 13, 12, no, 12
12
years.
years. Yeah, sorry, 12 years.
12 years, and that's when it got
2004. That's all I remember.
oh, graphical. So I almost want to talk about that next. Well, no, we'll get to it. Well, do you want to talk about that next? We'll just. All right. Speaking of graphics, because I wanted to transition into what we're talking about it.
It worked been great.
Yeah. Graphics. The graphics in WoW are they're cartoony. Let's just cut it. There's no cut and dry. It's a cartoony game.
And we don't really mean that in a negative way.
No, not at all.
It does have a very cartoony, animated style, and that's just the way that it is. It has aged pretty well.
Yes, that's also made its graphical update easy to do. I believe it was easier. Let's say if it was realistic, it would have been a little harder. I think to because they would have disoriented players. I got attached to my character. Where when you get a graphics bump, it's like, ooh, my character's in high def now. It's kind of like I went from an old box tube TV to getting a 1080p TV, and you're just like, what? It just happened. So, yeah, great stuff. I mean, it's good that they have the ability to do that. Based on the Stormblood trailer, it almost looked like Derplander got a makeover, so who knows? I'm hoping for butt sliders. Is really what I want in Final Fantasy 14.
I don't think you're gonna get.
Listen, did you know that the butts were bigger in 1.0? Like, we lost butt terrain. I'm just saying, Storm Blood, Storm Booty. I'm just No?
No, we gotta wait for the pirate expansion for that.
Can we get that?
I mean, I don't know why not. We've gone to Ishgard. Now we're going to Alamigo. We had the snow and the massive sky islands. We're going to the desert and all these other different places that are kind of between Gridania and Ul'dah. Why can't we get a Limsa based expansion?
Dear Square Enix.
We want pirates.
Yeah, that's what I want. More boats.
But not underwater levels. Those generally suck.
Are we? Wait, which ones? Are we talking about the water dungeon from Ocarina of Time, or?
A little bit.
Fuck that dungeon. Anyway.
Water temple.
Never
water temple.
Never. Remember, quick story with Flat. I remember being 13, 14 playing through the water temple, and that was the first time I ever got frustrated with a video game, and I had to put down the controller and walk away, and I was angry at it. I was like I shouldn't be angry at a game. Came back with a guide and sat down. I was like, I'm beating you. Fuck you, water temple. Anyway, all right. So the graphics leading to gameplay. Some of the we'll start with I'll focus on Legion because this is current. Legion updated the animations for a lot of the character moves. For Warriors, Heroic Leap used to just be your character was kind of like an old school Mario thing. It was like whoop whoop whoop, kind of like that. There was very not a whole lot of cool animation to it. Now it's you leap you're leaping, and your axe is flying back what you would expect to see in a Pixar warrior doing and crashing down. That's the animation now. I would say they're really stepping up the level of their animation to match the game, and Blizzard has the funds to do that. They have the funds to go in and say, not only can we make our game look better and keep it up with the times, we're also going to make sure that our animation is matching the games that are out now. We want it to not only look good, we want it to feel good. When you're doing a heroic leap, you want it to be heroic. When you're doing a crushing blow or a shield slam, we want you to see the shield, your arm move and the shield push. Spell casting. I run a warrior tank, and my mage went to fire currently, but I always was arcane, and I still logged in and did some arcane stuff. Like casting fire is cool. Like my hand glows on fire, and I cast the fireball. It's got a trail of fire as on the tail. It's cool stuff. Good stuff. Final Fantasy, I think, also has like that level, but it's different. Um, I don't know how to explain that. I don't want to say it's the cartoon aspect of Warcraft lends to it better, because I think Final Fantasy is a little more realistic in their character models. But I've never felt that I'll say the crunch. When I feel my Dark Knight swing and kick, like for instance, when I do my kick to stun, I love that because I always feel like my kick is doing something. I never feel like when I'm casting and swinging my sword, like I don't feel like, oh, this is too fast. It's way too big of a sword. How there's no way he can swing it that fast. I feel like there is some weight behind my sword because I see my character lift it up and like swing down, like he's got to swing his whole body into it to make it work.
It's a little big still.
Yeah, that's fine. That's mine. I own it, baby. It's fine. What about you, man? Like white mage.
I got a sparkly stick. It's not really that impressive.
Oh, I'm gonna cut that out later. I'm gonna put a marker in for that. I got a sparkly stick and it's not that impressive. Listen, if I ever get a soundboard, guess what's number one on that soundboard?
I don't know. Do you want any heals left?
Shit.
How I can get away with saying pretty much anything here.
Heels. Comedy. Heels. Comedy. If I don't get healed, I could hit it. Well, I mean, yeah, but at the same time, do you even for, let's say, when you're your bard, do you feel like when you're pulling back on your bow and casting, like, do you feel like, I know that's a weird thing to say. Does it feel like, I know that's such a weird thing to say, but this was always a conversation I had with one of my friends, IRL, who also played Warcraft. That when we played other MMOs, the animations never felt buttery. I'm going to use the term buttery. Smooth, in other words. Because when you play, not gonna say Skyrim, that's a terrible. Witcher, I'm gonna say Witcher. I'll go with Dark Souls. Any of those games, like there are certain weapons, like those big weapons or small weapons, or when you're casting a spell, or when you're doing certain things. Bloodborne, for instance, when you have the gun, like there are weapons that you're like, man, that feels good to hit the button to make the thing happen because it looks good, and it's like when you see your character like, I mean, I'm wailing a giant thing and it looks like I'm hitting him and it hurts. So that's what I'm talking about, like that thing, that aspect of it. What do you think about that?
Yeah, and I guess as more of a ranged player, I don't see that as often. Like I do feel like there is some of that feeling like when you're casting a spell, it's this big production of you are going and doing all these different ritual or some sort of procedure to make sure the spell gets cast, and it does have that kind of emphasis that you are doing this action and it's having an effect on the world. Um, Surprisingly less so on my bard, I find, but that could also be because I'm not paying attention to what my bow's doing so much as um, what are my cooldowns. But yeah, I definitely feel like there's a little bit more to the animations and the process that goes on when you're doing all these different actions, and I think they could probably do it a little bit more in Final Fantasy 14 just because they have that uh, longer global cooldown than most other games I can think of. I know in EverQuest 2 there really is not a global cooldown at all. Like you cast one after the other and it's just really, 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 really fast. And it doesn't necessarily have that emphasis on any single attack, more of just keep going as fast as you can with your entire casting order. Similar with WoW, like it has that casting there, but it's a much faster global cooldown than 14.
Some of them don't even have cooldowns. Some of them are just slamming buttons. All right, so I'm gonna take that part. I'm gonna hold on to it, and we could run through PvP really quick. PvP in Warcraft, they're changing up in Legion for 7.2. I think they're adding modifiers to games. Cool. Like sometimes you'll have snow and they'll be blocking out like what you can see. So there's certain like capture the point maps where normally you'd capture the lumber mill and you can see the entire map. That's so you always want that as a viewpoint so you can kind of call out and be like, all right, they're taking this or taking the mines. Now with that snow, it blocks that sound out or that stuff out, so you can't see it, so you're blinded. So that's cool. Final Fantasy PvP is growing, and I mean that in a good way because it's new to the game, and they're working really closely with the PvP community. And I think that's really good. I think that's super smart. I know that Joe Never Fails has a group of PvPers that like talk directly to the PvP creators over at Square. That's good stuff. That means only good things for a game whose PvP came in, and it's only going to grow from here. I think WoW doesn't. They haven't really even added a lot of PvP. Like they changed the PvP system. It's more of a Call of Duty like leveling type system now. Cool, I guess. But I don't know. I think PvP. I like the 3v3, like the 1v1v1 form of PvP that Final Fantasy has. What I wish is that it wasn't locked behind the grand companies, because I think that would shave off 20 minutes of waiting for PvP queues to pop, and I think that should be rectified in some sort of way. I don't think it should be like the Grand Melee, where it's like you can if your Grand Company's open, you fill a slot for it, but if not, you just get thrown on another team. Or we all fight for Eorzean Alliance, and it's like whatever, it's all for funsies. I don't know what to say. Just do it, make it happen. Or pretend we're all doing it for Ishgard. And you just saved yourself. That's all I got for that. We're gonna move on to classes and races. Warcraft has way too many. It's got.
I kind of like the mix of having a lot of different class options, and I think Final Fantasy kind of gets this to a nice level. I didn't find there was actually a lot of class choices in Warcraft. Like they have a bunch of classes, and each of them has specializations, but I didn't find like there was a lot of. I didn't feel like there was a lot of options when I was choosing my character race or class. Sorry.
You're not wrong. You're really not. I mean, they try to make it feel even more special with the weapon system that they put in place now. And Rose did get a new specialization. And then Gnomes also got Hunter added to them because they can like build their own pets or robo pets. That's the thing. And they also created a melee Hunter. So they were trying a lot of new things to make them feel like, all right, it doesn't matter if you're a fire mage, because it's going to play entirely different from the frost mage, and it's going to feel different, and you're going to have a different weapon, and it's going to play out differently from that one, mixed in with Arcane, which Arcane is more about global cooldowns and managing your mana, and they get this, stuff like that. So yeah, I see that, because it does lock out certain things. I say if you're a DPS class, you have your choice. Like, do I want to be, oh cool, I could be a melee hunter, I'm gonna go with that one. Where if you're like a warrior, it's like, all right, I could be DPS, I could be a tank, or I can do this other DPS that plays slightly different than the other DPS. Priest is kind of the same thing, where like Priest was like, I have my DPS role, I have my healing role, and I have my I can kind of DPS and I can kind of heal roll. It's a mix. Not necessarily the best one, but mix. So there are classes that suffer in some respect, because I would say this: WoW's really good with the meta. Whatever the flavor of the month, usually people play, but since they did this whole new weapon system, people went with what they're comfortable and playing with what they find fun. I think that's one of the first times that you can do that because you need to level the weapon, and most people are like, fuck that. So they're just like, I'm stuck with this until they fix it. So good on Blizzard for making that work, but we'll see as that. I'm gonna say that we'll see on that one. At least for Final Fantasy, I feel like all the jobs feel unique, and they're clear. Like White Mage is healing. Dark Knight is what it's gonna do. It's tanking, but it's using magic to do like dark magic, dark arts to keep itself alive and dish out damage. And balance that.
There's kind of pros and cons of that too. Like you don't have the option on your class to be like, hey, I'm going to be a white mage that's going to go out and DPS, even though I do that all the time. You are pretty much stuck in that role as a healer. But on the flip side, in Final Fantasy, you can play every single class from the same character. So you know what? I don't feel like healing today. I'm going to go switch to a bard, and I'm just going to destroy things.
Yep. So that. So kind of look at it like this: for the people in Warcraft, if you like you're altaholic, and in Final Fantasy, you technically you are an altaholic, kind of. You're the same character. You're a classaholic, jobaholic, maybe, workaholic.
Yes.
I don't know. Maybe after listening to this episode, alcoholic. I don't know. Alcoholism is a terrible. I apologize. I'm going to hell. There's a special place. I think my co-host just quit. He's like, well, that was a good run, everybody. 13 episodes of Mills from Ring.
And it all goes down after that.
I did it. So, I lost. I just lost myself. Anyway, so also the races are varied. I think Warcraft has a lot more races and varied. Like you have the undead, you have orcs. Final Fantasy kind of. If you look at Final Fantasy 11, you're like, okay, and then you look at Final Fantasy 14, you're like, I see where they got the idea. I get it. Hume, Hure, Makote. I forget what they are in 11. Cats.
Lalafell,
Tataru. Or Taru. Yes. Totoro's. Same thing. If you look, it's just very but the Aura was a new addition. So, moving up in the world. I would like to see the bunny people from Final Fantasy 12. That's me. I would love that. Mostly because I'm hoping that my future waifu is in game and she's a bunny lady, and I will find her. So,
she's probably in the Manderville Golden Saucer right now.
Well, I mean, she's got to be a real bunny lady. I got issues. I'm a grown man with issues. Anyway, let's move on to dungeons, raids, and trials. Shin, dungeons, raids, and trials. I don't even know how to get this one going. All right, we'll start with dungeons. We'll go with themes. The theme, you didn't do a whole lot of dungeons in World of Warcraft because you were doing some of the Legion ones. Thematically, all right, so we'll start with the theme. Thematically, how do you feel the dungeons match up? Do you think that WoW dungeons are very this is the zone and this is the dungeon for the zone, and then it's kind of go through and just do the thing?
I think even though WoW, they started, they had a dungeon for every single end of zone quest line kind of thing. I didn't find that dungeon really tied in terribly well with the quest. yes, it was part of the quest, and yes, there was some dialogue in it that related to the quest, but it didn't necessarily link up well with the storyline. And Final Fantasy is also very much prone to doing this as well. There are dungeons that just kind of get thrown in, and hey, yeah, we're doing a dungeon in the middle of the quest line. It doesn't really mean a whole lot. But on the other hand, it does have a few dungeons that are very much this is part of the storyline. And as much as I'm not a huge fan of the dungeon, particularly from some bad experiences running it for the first few times, the Vault I think does this really well in Final Fantasy 14. It is a very story-driven dungeon.
You have PTSD from the vault.
Have a little bit, yeah.
Just checking. We made it eventually.
But like it does follow. It is very, very thematic. It's very much involved in the storyline. Like you are going through this thing where you have to fight members of the Heaven's Word to get up to the end of this vault and defeat the head guy there to kind of rescue and complete the storyline. And then as soon as you're done that quest, you end up at the end of the vault, and there's this whole big long cutscene that in itself was pretty awesome watching it. But you're involved with it from the beginning of we get to the vault and now we have to run through this vault to do all these different things, and you're going through each of them, and then later you go and you're fighting Thoradin. Spoiler alert. And you're fighting Thoradin, and all of these guys that you previously fought in the vault are back and have the same mechanics, very similar fights while you're fighting Thoradin there. And it's just they kind of build all of these different things and continue them throughout each of the dungeons.
I cannot agree with you more. I know what you're saying, and I completely agree. And this is not against WoW. I think WoW does their dungeons in their own way really well. But he's right. Like you may not get a whole lot of story until like the very end, and it's like, oh, here's the last boss is where the story is, and nothing changes. And also speak about the dungeons, we also get hard modes of said dungeons. So the story continues. Like we may get one version at earlier on, and then at top level, unlock the second part of that story. It's all new paths, all new bosses, and it continues that story you originally played through, which I think is a benefit because the hard mode of Warcraft dungeons are the same dungeon, just slightly harder.
Yeah, I think Tamtara Deepcroft really shows that in Final Fantasy. Like you get that as I think that's the second dungeon you unlock in the game. So you're around level 20-ish maybe, and you're going through this dungeon, figuring out the storyline and everything there. And then 30 levels later, level 50, you're right back into the hard mode of Tamtara Deepcroft, which extends the story from the original, and it keeps going. And after that, it kind of gives that really, really creepy cutscene of, hey, there might be more to this. And then lo and behold, a few months ago, we get Palace of the Dead, which again continues the storyline for not even the first 50 levels, the entirety of the first 100 levels, I think, continues that storyline.
Agreed.
So like, even transcending different dungeons, like they're taking that content and bringing it across the entire world, whether it's random ghost pop-ups that just happen to go in as an Easter egg or new content that they're bringing out. Like they could tie everything together really, really well.
Yeah.
Which I don't think I saw in Warcraft. Although I did kind of hear with that whole like they kind of linked some of the stories with the raid and the dungeon bosses and the quest lines, and that sounded kind of interesting.
Yeah, where what they lack in story sometimes in the dungeon, they'll expand upon in the raid, because that's where they want some of their story to really like flesh out, is really in there. I think the Emerald Nightmare is really like a good version of that. So, speaking of raids and stories, uh, like Binding Coil Bahamut, Crystal Tower, the Lost City of Mach, and the I don't even know what those Void Arc series of raids, and Alexander, all contain their own story, all connected, the Binding Coil Bahamut connected to the ending of 1.0 and 2.0, bringing in Mach being its own story. You play through it, and where I think WoW's raids are very large, like the whole thing is something you can travel through and explore. Um, the raiding a little bit in Final Fantasy seems very like point A, point B, point A, point B, point C, point D. Like you get the point. Like you're going straight through. I hope that changes. I want to say that is more of a limited on budget and and based on what they said at FanFest, I think sounds like it's going to change. And I hope it does because I believe that what they're doing is something special. And I'm going to touch on Trials really quick because that is something unique to Final Fantasy XIV that WoW doesn't have. Trials are a one-shot raid boss. I'm going to just call them that. It's a one-shot raid boss. And the mechanics are usually... It's very choreographed fights. That being said, the way that the battle system... And before we talked about like how gameplay is, I'm going to touch this in gameplay. Where some people say that the global cooldown is really slow, so combat feels slow. When you get to the higher levels and you start running these trials and these very choreographed fights, you see why it's important that the global cooldown is that way, because you do have defensive and offensive things that pop in that you activate to keep yourself alive during a lot of the mechanics of these fights. So where WoW raiding, sometimes you can like, all right, I stood in the fire, it's okay because my healers got me through it, it's fine, and pull through, because you can kind of there's leeway if you fuck up, right? There's that gap of leeway where I don't think you get that gap until you get the buff like the Echo, and you may not get that for until a patch, so it's a little more difficult. So there is that like, how do you do this? And I will say that the Sophia, the current patch, made things a little easier, and we'll talk about that next time a little bit. I think that's something I could touch on next time, because we're running a little long here. But trials are really neat, and the cool thing about the trials, and this is our next thing and our last thing, is the music. The music in Final Fantasy is beautiful. It's fantastic. The soundtracks are amazing. I will run trials just to hear songs. I'll run certain dungeons just to hear certain songs.
Despite really, really stupid customs and a terrible conversion rate of US to Canadian, I might have went out and bought 3 of the CDs.
Yeah.
Really regretted not doing it at FanFest.
I'm not even telling them to like rip me those CDs and like, give me that music, because that would be wrong as shit. Because I have it in game and I'll just listen to it there because it's cheaper. I'm already paying $14.99 a month for it. I'm not saying you got bamboozled. I think you made the right choice so you get minions, but
I am not regretting my decision at all.
I wouldn't.
The music in this game is beautiful.
Listen, if I had like three hits of whiskey, I probably would have been like, that seems like a great idea. No, he was not drunk. I would have done drunk. He didn't. That's not to take away from Warcraft. Warcraft's got really great sound design. And there's some songs I'm like, that's a really good song, but none of it sticks out. Like there's nothing like I'm like, it's very atmospheric. Like Warcraft's very like, I feel like it's always that background soundtrack and the music and the sound design in the forests, and like there's certain forests like they make you feel haunted. Like it feels like it's dead. Like you kind of hear groans and moans out in the woods, and it's all that atmosphere. Final Fantasy also has that atmosphere too, but it's also got this great music soundtrack as well. So I think both on sound design, they're both doing really well. They're both doing things different. It's just that I'm sorry, if I have to give one thing to Final Fantasy, WoW doesn't have Soken. And I'm sorry, Soken is a genius when it comes to music. I wish he was doing the music for Final Fantasy 15. He's not, but that's not to say that that the music for Final Fantasy 15 is bad, because Final Fantasy 14 music is going to be in there anyway. Win. So
I'm really looking forward to Final Fantasy 15 music, and I'm glad that I will have the CD for that. Great. And I can't wait for my 14 music to come in, because like you said it best. WoW is a lot of background music, and Final Fantasy has that, but it also has a focus on particular songs.
Yeah. So, I'm not sure if this gave WoW players an insight into Final Fantasy 14, or if it gave Final Fantasy 4 players an insight to Warcraft. But
Or if it made both of them hate us.
a little bit could have been that. Yeah. I will say this, and I hope this kind of wraps everything in a nice little bow. Both games are doing really well, and both games are very different, and that's not a bad thing. They need to be different. They both need to be trying new things, and they both need to be looking at each other to take things and be like, I think we can do that better. Yoshi P was currently caught at BlizzCon. That's not a bad thing. And at BlizzCon, Blizzard employees said, like, we really are looking at Final Fantasy fights because they're doing some really cool shit. And they are. Like, I have to say some of my favorite times doing boss fights is in Final Fantasy. My favorite, by far, my favorite raid fight ever in my years of raiding is, and I fucking killed the Lich King, so like as much as like that was cool, like Ozma is still my favorite fight, just because it's so awesome. Like it's so random, you don't know what's happening, and all of a sudden you get sucked into a black hole and shit's going real. It's so great.
I still think I have a raid in EQ2 that is one of my all-time favorites, just from mechanics and from a community point of view. But yeah, Ozma is a pretty great fight.
It's so good. And I just can't wait to see what they do in Stormblood. So, I'm not saying that WoW is dying out and that you should jump ship. And I know that they're trying real hard to pump out as much content as they can and look at the future, because they're trying to look at Final Fantasy, and if Final Fantasy can do it, WoW can do it. So, it's good stuff, guys. Stormblood is next year. I'm excited for that. If you are a WoW player and you have time this Christmas and Black Friday's coming up and you have a few dollars and you see a sale on Final Fantasy 14 and you've always been interested, give it a shot. Let yourself get lost in the story, create your character, go for it, because it does. Listen, it's a fantastically put together game. It may be a little slow for you at the beginning because that's just kind of like how MMOs are for any MMO veteran. Any new MMO feels slow at the start. It's just a thing. But concentrate on the story, and then you'll get through it. You'll start hitting those dungeons. It'll be a lot of fun. If you need help, you can find Shin and I on the Famfrit server. We run our own FC there. It's called Garuda Gang, GG for short. Not Gamergate. I don't know why people. Somebody told me that. They're like, "Is it Gamergate?" I'm like, "No, Garuda Gang."
GG.
I mean, it's a winged beast woman. I mean, I don't even. Anyway, if you find us, we're on Famfrit. Create your character at weird times. We'll help you out. We're laid back. We joke. It's fun times over there. So give it a shot. And if you're a Final Fantasy player and you've never played Warcraft, I shouldn't even try Warcraft. Sometimes you gotta go see what the competition's doing to appreciate what they're doing, and sometimes to develop an opinion on it. Playing MMOs, sometimes you gotta play a lot to understand how to talk about them. I've played 20 something of them, and I still don't get it. So, I'm just kidding. I think we all share a lot of love and for Final Fantasy 14, and I have after 12 years, I do not hate Warcraft. I do have a lot of respect for the game, and I made a lot of friends and have great memories, and I think it's growing, and I think it's something. If Yoshi P's at BlizzCon, he's looking at what they're doing, the content they're putting out, and he's clearly a fan of their content. He's there because he's a fan. The same just like myself. And if you're a WoW player, I give it a shot. I give you the Final Fantasy 14 challenge. Try it out. Have some fun. I know paying for 2 MMOs is a lot. Like I'm saying, just wait for Black Friday. You might see that and the expansion go on sale for dirt cheap. Try it out is my only thing. Shin, you got any closing thoughts for the peoples out there?
Nah, I think you summed it up pretty well with all of that.
All right. So with that, I'm gonna go through my shtick. I have to go through. Oh, hey, yeah. We are just waiting on artwork and approval for iTunes. We're at that point where we can finally say, like, thank you for being so patient, and you please look forward to it. So, eyes on Twitter. We will tweet out. You'll be able to get us in your RSS feed. You can hear our voices in your ear.
If you're really, really excited and you want to listen to our RSS feed, you can try getting to it at feeds with an S, feeds.maelstromradio.com/maelstromradio.
Yep. So with that, do this. So yeah, our blog and our website is www.maelstromradio.com. You can email us at show@maelstromradio.com. Send us your emails. If you have strong opinions about Warcraft or Final Fantasy 14, or you think I'm an idiot that talked for about an hour, let me know. Or you think I'm tired. If you think I'm wrong, disagree with me and tell me, like, no, WoW is a superior game. This is the reason why everything you listen was bunk. Tell us.
Do it all the time.
He does. You can find us on Twitter Maelstrom_radio. Shin is at Shinter. I am at Flatus. And you can find us here on Twitch, twitch.tv/Maelstrom Radio. Our YouTube is funky. It doesn't have a thing yet, so we need more follows over there. So if you'd be so kind and go over to just find us, Maelstrom Radio. Usually our picks are me making a goofy face. I really got to pick our new picks. I got to really start concentrating on getting that Maelstrom Radio symbol on there. Because it's usually just me and you going like that. Usually, yeah, that's the pictures. I'm like, why did I use that? So, that being said, I got nothing left. I got no steam in me. And I'm thirsty. So, guys, thank you so much. For Shin, my name is Flatus. And it's been a pleasure hosting Maelstrom Radio.
Close.
So close. I was there. Anyway, guys, see you all next week.
Thank you for listening to Maelstrom Radio. Today's episode is produced by Shintra Zarek and Flatus, aka Cypher Blackfire. You can find us on the web at www.maelstromradio.com. You can email the show at show@maelstromradio.com. You can find us on Twitter at Maelstrom_radio and on Twitch at twitch.tv/Maelstrom Radio. We're also on Facebook at facebook.com/Maelstrom Radio. The intro provided by Benjamin Anthony James, and the outro provided by Soto. And until Seaswell is all, we'll see you next time.